Purchase Media.
Well, it's a new week, which means it's time for a new batch of true crime headlines. Before we dive in, I do have one headline that's true crime adjacent. We're going to CrimeCon. Find us on Creator Row in Vegas from May 29th through 31st.
Plan on going but haven't purchased a ticket? You can use our code WEIRD10 at checkout to get 10% off your ticket price. We can't wait to meet you, and we may or may not be working on some new swag to give to listeners.
We'll put a link and the discount code in the show notes. Also, I know we ask it a lot, but I'm going to ask again. If you're enjoying our little corner of chaos, please take a minute to leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you're listening. It really does help us grow.
Okay, now that's all out of the way, let's get into this week's headlines. I'm Amber.
And I'm Gina.
And this is Weird True Crime, Headlines Edition.
Okay, we did a 3-part series on this one, and we're pissed this woman is back in the headlines. Letecia Stauch was sentenced to life in prison after being found guilty of the murder of her 11-year-old stepson, Gannon Stauch, in January of 2020.
If you're not familiar with the case, we will link our original coverage in the show notes. This woman is next level evil. She was arrested in March 2020 after Gannon's body was found in a suitcase below a bridge in the Florida Panhandle. She stabbed and then shot him to death in his bedroom before reporting him missing.
She pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, stating that she suffered from dissociative disorder, but the jury didn't buy it and found her guilty. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And yet, the Colorado Court of Appeals has overturned her conviction.
According to the Colorado Sun, a 3-judge panel ordered a retrial because of a biased juror. Stauch's attorneys were unable to dismiss the juror at the time of the trial. This juror's son-in-law worked as a deputy district attorney in the 4th Judicial District Attorney's Office in El Paso County, where the case was prosecuted.
In the 54-page ruling, Judge Needy Perwar wrote that the jurors should have been dismissed automatically because of their relationship to the DA's office. Judge Perwar wrote, quote, "Our Supreme Court has consistently recognized the type of error implicated here, a violation of the defendant's right to an unbiased jury, as so harmful that it warrants automatic reversal," end quote.
Obviously, this ruling is disappointing for the prosecutors and Gannon's family. Katie Singh, a spokesperson for the 4th Judicial District Attorney's Office, wrote in an email, quote, "We will consult with the Attorney General's office about seeking a review of the decision in the Colorado Supreme Court, and, if necessary, we will be prepared to present the case to a new jury here in El Paso County," end quote.
According to one judge on the Colorado Court of Appeals, Stauch waived her right to a new trial when her attorneys didn't use their preemptory challenges to remove the biased juror. Obviously, this would have been much better than letting the juror sit through the entire trial, only to reverse the conviction and order a new trial.
Despite the decision to overturn her conviction, Stauch will not be released from the Denver Women's Correctional Facility. She will remain there until the Colorado Supreme Court decides whether or not to hear arguments in the case.
If the Colorado Supreme Court judges refuse to hear arguments or uphold the decision of the appellate court, Stauch will be released from custody. If new charges are filed, she will be booked into the El Paso County Jail before the new trial.
God, I can't with this woman.
I can't either. This seems so ridiculous and easily avoidable.
That's what I was thinking. This is something that could have easily have been avoided, but man.
If they had known, like it says, if they had known that this juror had ties to the DEA office, how did they even make the jury? That should have been an automatic dismissal.
Of all of the cases that
one.
we've talked about, it has to be this one, though. Like, please.
And I know. And even if for some reason they do end up having to do a new trial, I don't see how there's any way in hell that she wouldn't be found guilty. But the fact that Gannon's family is going to have to go through this mess again.
That's the thing that pisses me off. They're going to
Yes.
have to relive the trauma and the nightmare of what they went through the first time because of this woman's crazy and an oversight. Like,
Because
it's just
some ridiculous oversight. If I got dismissed from a jury panel because I legit just said, yeah, I'm pretty sure this dude's guilty, this person shouldn't have ever gotten that far. Ever. That's just, I have so many questions about how we even got to that point, but whatever.
so many. I can't. Okay. All right, moving on before I get all angry and flappy over here. Singer David has been arrested in connection with the death of Celeste Rivas Hernandez. If you're not familiar with this case, we'll catch you up real quick.
David's real name is David Anthony Burke. He's 21 from Queens, and he blew up in 2022 when his song Romantic Homicide, yeah, that's the actual name of the song, went viral on TikTok.
The victim is Celeste Rivas Hernandez. She was 13 years old when her family reported her missing in April 2024 from Lake Elsinore in Riverside County, California. Her family told police she had a boyfriend named David. She was last seen alive on April 5th, 2024.
More than a year later, on September 8th, 2025, one day after what would have been her 15th birthday, workers at a Hollywood tow yard noticed a foul smell coming from an impounded Tesla. Inside the front trunk, they found her severely decomposed, dismembered remains. That Tesla was registered to, you guessed it, David.
The car had been sitting abandoned in the Hollywood Hills for over a month before anyone called it in, and it was towed to the impound lot. The LAPD was operating under the belief that Celeste's body had been in the car the entire time it was parked and abandoned in the Hollywood Hills.
David was in the middle of a North American tour and was in the Midwest the week his car was towed. After Celeste's body was found, the remainder of his tour dates were canceled.
The singer's friends told media outlets they knew David was romantically involved with Celeste, but they believed she was a 19-year-old student at USC. They didn't think she was a minor because she attended several age-restricted events. According to reporter Ashley Banfield, Celeste was 12 years old when she first started dating someone named David.
Ugh, that's gross.
Gross.
To me. Investigators spent months building the case while waiting on the medical examiner to officially establish the cause of death, which was no easy task given the state of remains. In the meantime, David quietly moved out of LA, transferred ownership of 2 Texas homes to his mother, and hired Blair Burke, one of Hollywood's top criminal defense attorneys.
According to the New York Times, the police do have evidence showing that David traveled to the Santa Barbara area sometime in the spring of 2025, but no additional details about this trip or its relevance to the investigation have been released.
The homeowner of the Hollywood Hills mansion that David was renting hired a private investigator, Steve Fisher, to determine if any criminal activity occurred inside the residence. Fisher gathered thousands of photos and videos from inside the house and says surveillance footage from the neighborhood clearly shows who drove that Tesla to its final parking spot.
According to Fox 11, Fisher stated there is no evidence that anything happened to Celeste inside the house, but there is evidence that helps nail down the timeline. There is also no evidence of a body being transferred before or after the Tesla was parked on Bluebird Avenue.
Fisher also shared that they found no evidence in those photos and videos that Celeste was ever inside of the home. He believes she was probably staying somewhere else, and a lot of time was spent near downtown LA. The last photos he has of Celeste are from January 2nd, 2025.
Well, investigators apparently got what they needed because on Thursday, April 16th, LAPD's Robbery Homicide Division arrested David Burke at a home in the Hollywood Hills just after 4:30 p.m. He is being held without bail. The case went to the DA's office on Monday for filing consideration.
His legal team immediately pushed back, saying the evidence will show Burke did not murder Celeste and was not the cause of her death, and that no grand jury has indicted him. Hi all, editor Gina here to add an update to this story. David was formally charged on Monday, April 20th, with the murder of Celeste Rivas Hernandez. According to Los Angeles County DA Nathan Hochman, David has been charged with first-degree murder with the special circumstances of lying in wait, committing the crime for financial gain, and murdering a witness to the investigation. According to the New York Times, the complaint filed includes the allegation that David, quote, personally used a deadly and dangerous weapon, a sharp instrument, end quote, to commit the murder. He has also been charged with the continuous sexual abuse of a child under the age of 14, as well as the unlawful mutilation of human remains. The DA's statement goes on to explain that after David sexually abused Celeste, she, quote, threatened to expose his criminal conduct and devastate his musical career, end quote. In response, David allegedly murdered her, cut up her body, and stuffed it into 2 bags that were placed in the front trunk of his Tesla. The felony complaint goes on to state that David engaged in 3 or more acts of substantial sexual conduct with Celeste between September 2023 and September 2024, when she was just 13 years old. David invited Celeste to his home in the Hollywood Hills on April 23rd, 2025, and she was never heard from again. According to the complaint, the mutilation of her remains occurred on May 5th, 2025. The charge carries a maximum sentence of life without the possibility of parole or the death penalty. Hochman said the DA's office has not decided whether to pursue the death penalty. Now back to our regularly scheduled episode. Rex Heuermann, the Gilgo Beach serial killer, has pleaded guilty to 8 murders over a span of nearly 2 decades.
If you're not familiar, Heuermann is a 62-year-old architect from Long Island. He grew up in Massapequa Park and ran his own firm in Midtown Manhattan. He lived in a house with his wife, daughter, and stepson. Neighbors described him as very quiet, dark, kept to himself, and extremely intelligent.
For years, he played the part of a normal suburban dad. Suffolk County DA Ray Tierney put it perfectly when he said Heuermann was, quote, play acting as a normal suburban dad, when in reality, all along, he was obsessively targeting innocent women for death, end quote.
From 1993 to 2010, he targeted sex workers using burner phones and aliases to contact them. He then strangled them and dumped most of their bodies near Gilgo Beach on Long Island, though he did dismember some of the victims.
A former FBI profiler explained that killers who live what's called a pro-social life, holding down a job, maintaining a family, appearing normal, tend to go undetected far longer than those who don't. Heuermann is a textbook example of that.
Here are the victims in order, because their names deserve to be remembered. Sandra Castilla, 28, was strangled in November 1993. She had a 5-year-old son. Hunters found her remains in Southampton about a week later. Karen Vergata, 34, was killed in April 1996. She had 2 sons. Heuermann strangled and dismembered her, scattering her remains at multiple locations. Her legs were found in Brookhaven, and her skull wasn't discovered until nearly 15 years later near Tobay Beach.
Valerie Mack, 24, was killed sometime in the fall of 2000. She had a son. Her remains were found in pieces years apart. Jessica Taylor, 20, was killed in July 2003. Her dismembered remains were also found in two separate locations. Maureen Brainerd Barnes, 25, vanished in July of 2007. She had two children. Her remains were found in 2010.
Melissa Barthelemy, 24, went missing in July 2009. That same year, her sister started receiving taunting phone calls believed to be from the killer. Megan Waterman, 22, was strangled in June 2010. She had a daughter who was just 3 years old when her mother disappeared. And finally, Amber Costello, 27, was killed in September 2010. Her remains were found that December.
Attorney Gloria Allred, who represents several of the victims' families, made a point that I think is worth sitting with. Many of these women were young mothers who turned to sex work because they had no meaningful alternatives. They were just trying to support their kids.
The case broke open in May 2010 when Shannon Gilbert, a 23-year-old escort, fled a client's home near Oak Beach and made a frantic 911 call, screaming that someone was going to kill her. She vanished. When police searched the area for her, they didn't find Gilbert.
But they did find the remains of 4 other women who became known as the Gilgo Beach Four: Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, and Amber Costello. More remains kept turning up across Long Island after that. Gilbert's own body wasn't found until December 2011, with her cause of death ruled inconclusive.
The case went cold for years. Then, in 2022, newly appointed Suffolk County Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison revitalized the investigation, forming a dedicated task force with the FBI and New York State Police. The break came when a state officer found the roommate of Amber Costello, who provided a witness description of a client driving a green Chevrolet Avalanche.
That car led investigators to Heuermann. From there, they pulled cell phone records and tower pings that placed Heuermann with multiple victims on the last days they were seen alive. And then came the pizza crust.
Investigators literally fished a discarded pizza crust out of a garage can outside Heuermann's Manhattan office and matched the DNA to hairs found on the burlap used to wrap some of the victims' bodies. He was arrested in July 2023.
Now, what came out in court documents about how he operated is genuinely disturbing. Prosecutors say he kept a written blueprint for his murders, a 4-column document labeled Problems, Supplies, Dump Sites, and Target. The Problems column listed things like DNA, tire marks, bloodstains, and fingerprints.
Supplies included rope, a saw, a police scanner, hair nets, and medical gloves. He had a pre-crime checklist, a during-crime checklist, and a post-crime checklist, including burn gloves, dispose of pics, and have story set.
Wild. He also kept notes to himself like, consider a hit to the neck next time, and wrote about the importance of getting enough sleep to maximize what he called playtime, which prosecutors believe referred to acts of sexual violence and mutilation.
He amassed an extensive collection of torture pornography and ran over 100 internet searches about serial killers, including searches about the Gilgo Beach investigation itself. A forensic psychologist who reviewed the case said he was essentially trying to perfect the crime over time, learning from his own mistakes.
He was set to go to trial in September 2026, but on April 8th, Heuermann walked into court in Riverhead wearing a dark suit, answered the judge's questions in what eyewitnesses described as a loud, confident voice, like he was in an architecture meeting, and pleaded guilty. 7 counts. Then he admitted to an 8th killing, Karen Vergata, which he hadn't even been formally charged with.
Why change his plea now? Legal experts offered a few theories. The evidence was insurmountable. The judge had ruled all 7 murders would be tried together and that new DNA evidence would be allowed in.
He may have wanted to keep some of the more gruesome details out of public view, shielding his daughter and ex-wife from the full horror of what he did. His own attorney said he thinks the guilty plea may have been cathartic for Heuermann and that he'll likely have something to say at sentencing.
His ex-wife, Asa Ellerup, was in the courtroom that day. Her attorney said she had always wanted to hear it come directly from his mouth, not read it in the news. She released a brief statement asking for privacy for her family. Her attorney was also clear that she and their daughter had no knowledge of or involvement in any of the crimes.
Heuermann will serve 3 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole for the murders of Barthélemy, Waterman, and Costello. Those 3 were killed within 18 months of each other, which allowed first-degree murder charges. The other 4 murders carry consecutive 25 to life sentences. To sum it up, he will spend the rest of his life in a cell.
As part of his plea deal, he's required to cooperate with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. The DA said investigators are hoping to gain real insight into what drove him, information that could potentially help in future cases.
Former Commissioner Harrison was clear that the investigation isn't necessarily closed either. Quote, "Are those the only bodies out there? Are there other bodies in Long Island or maybe even the state of New York that may be connected to him?" End quote.
For Megan Waterman's daughter, Liliana, who was 3 years old when her mom disappeared, she told ABC News that hearing him finally admit what he did felt like a weight being lifted. But she still has questions. Why her mother? Where did it happen? And how?
Maureen Brainard Barnes' sister, Melissa Kahn, made a statement that I want to end on because it said everything. Quote, "Today is not about the person responsible. Today is about the women's lives who were stolen. It's about their voices, their futures, and their families, the love that still surrounds them." End quote.
This dude is creepy.
I'm glad he pleaded guilty.
Yes. But I keep going back to how he was living a normal life and his wife and daughter had no knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but
Who else does that remind you of?
lots of people, unfortunately, that were like this. But I mean, if you see videos or pictures of his house, it's very interesting. The way he lived was very interesting, given that he was such a successful architect and businessman, because he did not live like you would think that he did. I think he obviously had a lot of mental health issues going on.
You think?
That I'm sure his wife was aware of, but obviously she didn't know this was going on. Could you imagine being married to someone for years and years and years and then finding out that they were responsible for this kind of thing?
Nope. If the name Duggar sounds familiar, it should, and not for good reasons.
The family became famous through the TLC reality show 19 Kids and Counting, which followed devout Baptist Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar and their 19 children, all of whose names start with the letter J.
The show was canceled in 2015 after it came out that their eldest son, Josh, had molested 4 of his sisters and a babysitter when he was a teenager. Then in 2021, Josh was arrested again, this time on federal charges of downloading child sexual abuse material. He was convicted and is currently serving a 12-and-a-half-year sentence in federal prison.
Now, another Duggar son is in handcuffs. Joseph Duggar, the 3rd oldest of Jim Bob and Michelle's 10 sons, was arrested on March 18th, 2026. He is 31 years old. He and his wife Kendra, formerly Kendra Caldwell, starred in the 19 Kids spinoff Counting On and have 4 children together, ages 3 to 7.
Okay, so here's what happened. Police in Tonatown, Arkansas were contacted by the father of a 14-year-old girl who said that Joseph Duggar had molested her repeatedly during a family vacation to Panama City Beach, Florida, back in 2020, when she was just 9 years old. According to the arrest affidavit from the Bay County Sheriff's Office in Florida, the girl reported that Duggar repeatedly asked her to sit on his lap and that the abuse escalated from there over the course of the trip.
The girl's father confronted Duggar directly about what his daughter had told him. Duggar admitted to it. Police then had the father call Duggar again, this time with the detective listening on the line. Duggar admitted to the actions again. He was arrested the same day.
Duggar was charged with lewd and lascivious molestation of a child under 12 and lewd and lascivious behavior conducted by a person 18 years or older. He was arrested in Arkansas and extradited to Florida, where he posted a $600,000 bond after his first court appearance. The judge barred him from having unsupervised contact with anyone under the age of 18. He pleaded not guilty.
2 days after Joseph's arrest, authorities conducted a home visit at the couple's house in Tonatown. What they found there led to a second wave of charges. Investigators discovered locks on the outside of the children's bedroom doors, meaning the kids could be locked in from the outside.
Both Joseph and Kendra were charged with 4 counts of endangering the welfare of a minor and 4 counts of second-degree false imprisonment. Kendra was booked into the Washington County Detention Center and released on bond within about an hour and a half. As a result of those charges, Kendra was reportedly separated from her 4 children for a full month.
Now, here's where it gets even more complicated. Jailhouse phone calls between Joseph and Kendra were recorded while he awaited extradition, and they've since been made public. In one call on March 23rd, Kendra told her husband, quote, "If there's anything I've learned from this, do not trust anyone. Just don't trust anyone," end quote.
Yeah, so that's a remarkable thing to say to your husband who is facing child molestation charges, and it raises a lot of questions about what she knew and when.
Yeah, you're not wrong at all. There's also a developing family drama playing out alongside the legal one. A Christian influencer named Amy Paul traveled to Arkansas to help Kendra's parents, Paul and Christina Caldwell, move out of a property that Joseph and Kendra apparently own. Well, Paul made a startling claim. The Caldwells are the ones who alerted authorities to Joseph's alleged crimes in the first place.
If that's true, it means Kendra's own parents turned her husband in. Joseph and Kendra reportedly moved to evict the Caldwells from that property after the arrest, which, if the timeline holds, suggests a falling out stemming directly from the tip to police.
Kendra's parents, the Caldwells, released a public statement on April 15th, nearly a month after the arrest. They said their family is both troubled and heartbroken over the alleged actions of their son in law. They called the victim, who is now 14, a child who was courageous in every way to share her truth, and said they stand by her in support and prayer forever. They also expressed concern for their 4 grandchildren, noting the situation has been traumatic for them as well.
The larger Duggar family has also responded. Jim Bob and Michelle released a statement saying they are heartbroken and focused on supporting Kendra and the children, while also saying they're praying for the victim. Jill Duggar Dillard and her husband released a statement saying they were shocked and heartbroken, that they strongly condemn abuse and that their hearts go out to the victim. Ginger Duggar said on her podcast that it had been one of those weeks that feels like years and that she didn't think her heart could break the way it had.
So, to recap, Joseph Duggar is facing felony child sex abuse charges in Florida, plus misdemeanor child endangerment and false imprisonment charges in Arkansas. His wife, Kendra, faces the same Arkansas charges. The case is ongoing. The victim was 9 years old.
The Duggar family has now had 2 sons arrested for crimes against children. The question a lot of people are asking, and one we'll keep tracking, is how much the culture and structure of this family enabled these patterns to persist.
Yeah, I didn't ever watch 19 Kids and Counting,
I didn't either.
But of course, this family comes up in the news a lot. So I did a little digging to remind myself of things that had come up before. So Jim Bob was aware of Josh, the oldest son, molesting young girls, but didn't report it. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Instead, he handled it through church counseling because that's how you get to the bottom of these kinds of situations, is just keep it under the rug and try to deal with it. We have our own feelings about religion and these type of things. Yeah. But obviously adults who have sexually abused a child are more likely to have been sexually abused as a child. So adults who abuse children were abused children more often than not.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sitting here saying that Jim Bob was an abuser. It could have been somebody from the church. It could have been a family friend that abused Josh as a child. And then he learned those actions, and that's why he did those things as a teen. Also, who knows what Joseph endured as a child as well? You know?
We may never know. It may come out sometime. Who knows? But yep, that's...
I also wonder how much of it was Kendra's doing and how much of it was her following what Joseph wanted, as far as like the locks on the doors and the child endangerment issues and things like that.
I mean, I have daydreamt about locking my children in their rooms when they're driving me crazy, but I've never actually done it.
No. Of course. It's really sad all around, and I hope that all of those people in that family get the help they need.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them have come out and spoken kind of against what happened in their childhood and growing up the way they did in the spotlight like they did. So it's just a very sad, messed up family. All around. Yeah. Okay, so this last one is interesting. It's being called the Family Trap Murder Trial, and once you hear the details, you will understand why.
Tracy Grist, 60 years old, is currently on trial in Provo, Utah, charged with murder, criminal conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and domestic violence in the presence of a child. The victim is her son-in-law, Matthew Rastelli, age 42. The accused shooter is her own son, and the key witness testifying against her? Her daughter, Matthew's wife.
Let's back up. Matthew Rastelli lived in California with his wife, Catherine, and their 2 children. By early 2024, the marriage was in trouble. Catherine had been texting her mother, Tracy, constantly, saying she was miserable.
In late June 2024, Catherine packed up the kids and drove to Utah to stay at her mother's home in American Fork without warning Matthew, leaving the family truck miles from their home. According to prosecutors, that's around the time the plan started taking shape.
Tracy Grist phone searches from May and June 2024 tell a story all on their own. She searched Utah gun laws. She looked up how to renew passports quickly. She searched local cemeteries. She looked up what scents attract mountain lions to humans. Relevant, apparently, because Matthew's family owned a desert wilderness property where mountain lions were occasionally spotted.
She also researched a Florida case involving a woman charged with murdering her son-in-law. And around the time Matthew would have been starting his drive to Utah, she searched for an "it's happening" meme. Her text messages during this period included, quote, "Matt made it, so I want to kill him. I'm going to kill him," end quote. And, "I won't call him. I'll just drive 9 hours and strangle him." When Catherine received that last text, her response was simply, "I know."
The plan, according to prosecutors, was to lure Matthew to Utah under the pretense of a family reconciliation. Catherine played the role of the good wife. She planned food stops on a recorded phone call, texted Matthew that she was excited to come home to California, and even pretended she had sprained her ankle so she couldn't drive back herself.
When Matthew arrived at Tracy's house on the night of July 12th, 2024, the lights were off. He walked inside, and within moments, he was shot 7 times by Catherine's brother, Kevin Ellis.
Here's the detail that tells you everything about how calculated this was. A knife was placed in Matthew's right hand after he was shot, but Matthew was left-handed. The plan was to claim Ellis shot him in self-defense.
You can't see me right now, but I'm rubbing my head in exasperation.
Which is why it kind of maybe sounded like I was laughing during that last part, because I was reacting to Amber's response.
Good God, we can't make this shit up.
No.
Unfortunately for Tracy, investigators caught on quickly. The detective on the case testified that Matthew was holding the blade loosely, in the wrong hand. Not at all how someone grips a knife they intend to use.
After the shooting, Tracy called 911. She also texted a neighbor, quote, "He had a knife and my son Kevin shot him," end quote. Her story was already set.
Kevin Ellis was tried first, convicted of murder, and sentenced to at least 20 years in prison. Catherine Rastelli pleaded guilty to murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and discharge of a firearm. She was sentenced to 1 to 15 years in prison. As part of her plea deal, she agreed to testify, first at Kevin's trial and now at her mother's.
And that testimony is something else. Catherine took the stand this week as the first witness in Tracy's trial, hands in handcuffs, wiping tears from her eyes. She testified that the murder plot started, in her words, as a joke, and then wasn't. She said her mother was the true mastermind, the one who made the decision to bring Kevin into the plan.
According to Catherine, Tracy told her that Kevin was feeling suicidal and that if he was going to go through with it anyway, he might as well, quote, go off Matt first and then finish himself off, end quote.
That's a crazy thing to say about your own kid. I'm just going to put that out there. She testified that as the day of the killing approached, she had second thoughts. On the day itself, after Tracy and Kevin had gone out for sushi and finalized the plan, Catherine stood at the top of the stairs, looked her mother in the eyes, and said, "Mom, I don't want to do this anymore."
Tracy Grist looked her daughter in the eyes and said, "I don't care. I'm doing it anyway." Catherine testified, "I realize I should have done more to stop it."
You think? After listening back to a recorded phone call she made to lure Matthew to his death, Catherine told the court that her voice faltered because she realized what she was doing: planning his murder, setting him up for failure.
The defense's position is that Kevin Ellis acted alone, that this was a messy situation that got out of hand, and that Tracy's involvement doesn't rise to the level of murder. They called the prosecution's versions of events beyond belief.
Tracy has pleaded not guilty to all charges. The trial is expected to last approximately 3 weeks.
Matthew Rastelli drove 9 hours from California, believing he was going home with his wife and kids. He walked through the door and was shot 7 times. His mother, Diane, testified that after her son was killed, she told Tracy Grist directly, quote, "This whole thing feels like a setup," end quote.
She was right.
I can't with this. All I have playing in my head right now is Futurama meme, "I don't want to live on this planet anymore."
I just don't understand. Why does it always go back to murder? Why? People split up all the time. It sounds like this woman just wanted a reason to kill someone.
The "I should have done more." The "I should have done more." Most people, when they come to that realization, oh, hey, I don't want to be doing this thing that I'm doing, if like they have a choice, if they're choosing to do it and they come to that Sorry, I'm getting all
Also, it sounds like Tracy might be a very manipulative person, and maybe the kids felt like they couldn't.
possibly.
Also, who says, well, you know, my kid's depressed and he was going to off himself anyway, so he might as well just take somebody else with him, out with him too. What?
That's great parenting right there.
Yeah, she sounds like a great parent.
I mean, I know I won't be winning Mom of the Year awards anytime soon, but at least I'm not doing this shit.
I don't ever see you doing something like this, so I think you're golden.
Yeah.
Or encouraging this kind of behavior.
Lord almighty.
Yeah. People be crazy.
Okay. God, I thought we were doing a weird headlines episode for a second there. My
Nope,
God.
This is real.
No,
this is real true crime headlines. I know.
Okay. There's a huge one we didn't touch on this week. The sentencing for Tanner Horner, who pleaded guilty earlier this month to the kidnapping and killing of 7-year-old Athena Strand.
The jury hadn't come back with their decision when we recorded this episode. And because this case involves a child, we didn't feel comfortable discussing it without the family's input.
No, but I will be wearing some pink in honor of Athena here very shortly.
Absolutely.
So if you enjoy these monthly headline episodes, please let us know. Make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Weird True Crime, where we post photos and reels that go along with our weekly episodes. And any other nonsense I can conjure up and force her to post. Also, make sure to subscribe wherever you listen so you never miss a new one.
Until next time, stay safe.
And make good choices.
Bye.
Bye.
Now back to our regularly scheduled episode.